Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh Radia, and I'm your host. I always love starting each episode by saying thank you. I feel so very blessed with my journey, with what I get to do with this podcast. I started this podcast to really simplify spirituality and guide people on the journey, and I feel so blessed that I get to do that. I am an Akashic record reader, I'm an Akashic trainer, I'm a podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. And I love guiding people to truly be their authentic selves, to release the programming, whatever they're holding on to, and to shine their light. I really feel like we've been put under so much pressure at the moment. The planet is going through such a shift. But the time is really to focus on what's happening on the inside. So many people are being activated, are really challenging themselves in a different sort of way. And I love guiding people. None of us are here to fix anybody, but I'm here to guide people to become their authentic selves. And as part of this podcast, I get to interview some amazing guests and people that I connect with. I'll always vet anybody and I always feel their energy because I'm very protective of the podcast. Not that it needs it, but I'm excited to have Donna on this episode. Donna's a beautiful energy. I connected with her recently, and I felt she was a natural for this episode. So I'm excited for the conversation. But I'd love for Donna to introduce herself. Donna, over to you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Nims. And the feeling's mutual. It's always a gift and a pleasure when you meet someone and you can feel that energy, that connection, and just know that, you're a friend and soul family. And I think everybody wants to feel safe in our relationships. So I think that's something I want to acknowledge in you. And I think Nims and I also share a little bit of similarities in that we have very deep conventional experience and also a lot of spiritual, what I call spiritual intelligence or spiritual wisdom to share. And as somebody who worked a lot in design and a lot in lifestyle and let's say brand positioning and brand strategy through designing things for the home, for people, for food, for media, all kinds of different things, all of this in Italy. When I started to deepen my relationship with my inner self and my spiritual path, that led to some very in-depth studies in Buddhism and, of course, other practices that I've included on the way. And in common, we have the use of the Akashic records. I think we use them slightly differently, but I think everybody does, and that's kind of the point. And what I've come to understand is how to integrate the two practices, the spiritual practice and the conventional wisdom, into helping people really understand more of who they are, the things that they're holding, and how by being more of themselves, they can be more benefit to the world, which is kind of the opposite of what we were taught. And, I'm a channel and an intuitive and, all the things. I don't talk about it a whole bunch, but I hold some other practices that are, and, wisdom that I share with, let's say, the people I work with closely or the people that I feel would benefit from it most. But essentially, the goal is to help people understand that, if we are one, if we are whole, then we can work on being one. And the oneness also includes everything we do. And so to help them move out of that conditioning of the separation between what we consider our spiritual life and what might be, our business world and things like that, and understand it as one big practice in being human and being ourselves.
Beautiful. And it's just, we were talking about before we started recording, is that the journey that, we all have that, we both have that corporate background. It's just, for me, many of us are meant to be that bridge, that bridge to give people hope is probably maybe the best human way of describing it, but it's that letting people know they have a choice. Not here to force anyone to do anything, but to give people a choice and give people an option. And like I was talking about in the introduction, I feel like the energy is shifting, and I feel like whatever we're going through has been accelerated, and we're being pushed to, pardon my language, but deal with our shit, right? Whatever's happening inside, I feel like the universe is pushing us. So I'd love to know more about you. What are you finding with your clients right now in terms of the current energy. What are you feeling about this shift? In full disclosure, we're recording this before a powerful full moon on the 14th. There's also Mercury going retrograde, Venus in retrograde. There's really lots of energetic shifts right now, and just I feel like a lot of people are feeling it. But I'm curious, what are you hearing from you? What do you feel inside, and also what are you hearing from your clients?
What I'm feeling inside, and we were speaking about this earlier, is that the more things seem chaotic or challenging in the external world, the more we have to ask ourselves who we are. What is it that we believe in? What is important to us? How can we be of benefit? How can we be of service by being the best of who we are? And for each person, that answer will be different because we carry all different, a series of experiences and imprints, if you believe in past lives, and dreams and desires and gifts that will lead some people on the path of activism, some people on the path of helping people regulate their nervous system, others to, find new structures for things as the systems that we have seem to be less than efficient. It might be a nice way to say that. And so it's really that what I'm feeling is that the courage to be who we are and the courage to say who we are, because even in my introduction, I pulled back from saying some things about myself because the habit, I'm going to call myself out on that, because the habit of, sort of dissimulating or not wanting to be unacceptable to the majority or whatever is something I think that we all feel, right? There's that fear of rejection or fear of judgment. And I kind of think we don't have it. That's a luxury now. That feels to me a little bit in the sense of, I don't know that, I just feel it's more and more important to do that. And what I found interesting in my clients is that some things that have worked brilliantly no longer work for them. And they are wildly successful businesses. And I'm not talking Tesla people, that's a whole other story. But people who have successful, very in many ways conscious people, the system that they learned and the way they learned to do things, they're just running up against a brick wall, and they're a little bit shocked and surprised and asking themselves, why, what's going on, who I need to be. And I would like to kind of just point out something that's a little bit logical, really, that we don't think about, of how much effort is being put into personal development, personal awareness, raising our consciousness. And there's an assumption that as that arises within you, or as it reveals itself, you will know exactly what to do, and you will know how to translate that into actions and thoughts and structures and words and deeds. And that's not necessarily the case. And so just assuming that if as people become more, let's say, awakened to their nature and the nature of reality and the nature of what it means to be human, that they will have the discernment to know what is right. In many cases they will, but they also need a hand in releasing themselves from the conditioning that they've had as to believe, what is a business, or, what is a nonprofit, or all the things that we've been kind of taught, and how to move differently. And there's a huge desire at very, very high levels for increased humanity. I was at a very beautiful experience now recently in the US, and people were moved to tears, people at super high levels, and they were just saying, we just need this connection to people and to feel human and to have our humanity recognized and acknowledged and appreciated. And I think that's a good sign.
Wow, I love that. I love that.
Mm.
The way you describe it, for me, I always talk about we're shifting from divine masculine to divine feminine.
Yeah.
And if something happens to somebody, they're not going to get the answers from their history, right? It's like,
No.
and so many of us have been through so much, right? And it's like both of our corporate backgrounds, so much training. It's like a lot of time we're not going to get the answers from that space because
No.
that's our history. Whereas, if we switch to trusting our heart and switch from I think to I feel, our answers come from a different, deeper soul perspective, and maybe we get a different response. But the thing is that our programming in so many ways is so rigid, especially in the corporate space. We get so much training and honestly, all that training and everything we've been through helped us, right? It got us to where we are today. But I agree. I don't feel like it's going to get us to where we need to be tomorrow. And it's an interesting time where we are all going through resets and rebirths, and we are being channeled and challenged in a different sort of way. And I love it. I'm here for it. But it's
Yeah.
just different people are reacting differently. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of, we think of things like, well, just because I was a good, horse and carriage, driver doesn't gonna mean I'm going to be a great Formula One driver, or if I'm a great street driver, I'm not going to be a great Formula One driver. That's obvious to everyone, but it's less obvious when we think of the systems that we're, perpetuating, or that we grew up in, and that we're conditioned to think that had to be in a certain way. It takes a lot of courage to say, okay, I may even be the head of this, I may even have founded this, but is this actually what I want? And is this actually what is going to give me that feeling of an understanding, that feeling of significance I think that we're all looking for? And people were taught, and we're of an age where we were, pretty well indoctrinated to think that certain things, this plus this will equal a certain amount of personal satisfaction and happiness. And the reality is that it isn't that. And so looking to those that do have it, and even within the same circles or sectors, how do they have it? Why did they have it? What brought them to have it? Excuse me. And, that freedom to imagine something different, that takes a bit of courage.
Beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, in this space, in this energy, and there's clearly, I'd love to know more about your history in terms of your spiritual journey. You talked about so many different modalities, and the spiritual side. I'd just love to know more about your history and kind of how you activated some of those abilities, and anything you want to share that's in your heart.
Oh, yeah. So, you know how people don't listen to their own advice? It's like, raise your hand. So so I'm Canadian. I was born in Canada, grew up in Canada, moved to Italy, and lived there 40 years. And I'm now living in France. But for years, people would say, "Are you Catholic?" And I would answer, but this went on for a long time, like a decade or more. "Are you Catholic?" "No, if I were anything, I would be Buddhist." And I keep saying, why do I keep saying this? Maybe I should do something about this. Why do I keep saying this? So, as I said, nobody listens to their own advice. Like, I was literally saying the words and not listening to myself as I said the words. And I started a meditation practice on my own, literally following instructions from a book and of a very good teacher. And it's a lovely book, and it's very well, it's very well considered and very popular. And it was a great book, actually. It's perfect. But at a certain point, it's kind of not enough, right? It's like, okay, things are happening here. Who do I talk to? And a series of, events brought me to have some wonderful connections with some very, um, I would say, very advanced teachers in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And that shifted how I see everything, my understanding of reality, my understanding of, you know, how we're related. People will say interdependence. I don't want to get too technical in the language, but essentially our ultimate nature, what's available to us, the way things are as opposed to the way things appear. And that in a very, and a lot of meditations, a lot of retreats, a lot of teachings, and a lot of reflecting on the teachings really, really just was an absolute shift for me. And then from there, other things open up for you. And as all the Buddhist teachers will say, that any of the other openings is, clairsentience or clairvoyance or clairaudience, these are all side effects of a practice, right? They're not the objective. They're something that happens along the way, um, as you're working towards, in their view, enlightenment. But anyways, as you go through various stages of awakening, you become more and more aware of the invisible. And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot and talking about a lot with people is, you know, everybody's so used to measuring KPIs and ROIs and all the things, but what moves us to tears, what the biggest moments in our lives are really based on immeasurables and intangibles. And to consider that more in everything they do and to bring those considerations into, let's say, their livelihood and their activities. So the Buddhist practices the other thing that I had this incredible fortune um, uh, to host some teachers in my home in a couple of places, in different places, in 2 different countries actually. And I learned so much about offering and reverence and devotion that has nothing um, and serving others in a way that is so expansive to your heart and to your mind. Because one of the teaching is that, if you're offering it to the teacher is really just a reflection of you, but also you're offering it to all being, anyone any being that needs water, any being that needs food. And so all of a sudden there's this huge heart opening towards anything that you do. And as somebody who had a background, I always worked as a consultant for different brands, and I became known for, let's say, lifestyle. So that would be designing things for the home, designing gardens, designing interiors, working with food a lot. I wrote a couple of cookbooks. So there was sort of a conventional knowledge, but that spiritual and that intention behind the things I did just shifted things. So, it was a seismic shift for me. And that is so powerful to understand that you can offer somebody even a glass of water and for that to be a very powerful experience for you. I think that's something that I try to communicate to people and try to bring into my sort of what I try to sort of point out for people, but to have them experience that in some way in what they do in their work. And that intention setting is incredibly powerful, the motivation and intention with which you do things.
I love it. I love it. So what would your advice be to somebody that's feeling the shift? Because I talk to a lot of people who are feeling like they're kind of not in control anymore. And it's interesting in the corporate space. It's control is a big thing, right? It's just anticipating what's coming, planning for the next 6 months, 12 months, a year. Actually, I left the corporate space when we were entering into another planning cycle, and I couldn't face it. I just couldn't face it anymore. It was just, I was trying to balance both worlds, and I got to a point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't.
Yeah.
It wasn't, everyone says I was brave in the choice and all the rest of it. I mean, leaving a very senior role, but I don't know if it was a choice, if that makes sense.
No, I know. I think we have the courage to make those shifts when we don't feel we have a choice. Right?
Yeah.
That helps.
In my heart, I just knew I had to do it. And I remember talking to my manager, who was only my manager for 18 months, and she was like, I knew you were here for so much more, so I'm not surprised. I was like, okay. I didn't feel that she knew me that well, but clearly she did. So, it's just beautiful when the universe kind of sends you people to confirm that you're on the right path. And honestly, I haven't looked back. So I just if anyone's listening and they're debating over making a big decision, follow your heart. And I do feel like a lot of us are going through transformations and changing who we are, changing our careers, merging worlds. How you do one thing is how we do everything. Do it. Embrace it. Maybe this is your message if you listen to this episode, to embrace why you're here and just make a shift.
So I guess I have a few things I could offer. What I've understood from every single person I have worked with, as in every single person, is that they will have something they did in the past and something they're doing now and something they hope to do in the future. And quite often there's the abandonment of what we did in the past. You left corporate. Great. but you learned things there. We all learn things as human beings. So why did we do that for so long? What did we learn? What is it did we learn those things so we can go back, we can be of help to people who are in that situation? Or did we learn skills that we can apply to other things? So I find that there's quite often a pendulum swing, especially with people who have, let's say, a powerful awakening experience, is that, oh no, I can't do that anymore. And they just kind of drop and run, which is not what you did. Yours was a much more conscious choice, and you're moving into something that is yours. But even in your own work, you may find that there's, and I think we spoke about this last time we talked, there may come a time when you feel that there's something where those two worlds merge. And I think that's part of owning ourselves. When we abandon those experiences, we also abandon parts of ourselves. And that's really important, to not do that, or to have, or you can do it for a while, but to go back, because sometimes we do need rest from things or to explore new things. But there does come a time, I think, when, in my experience anyways, when it's really helpful to go back and say, okay, what was it about that I enjoyed, that I liked? What is needed there? Like, can I help in that situation? Or is there something I can bring forward into what I'm doing now? So my past experience has been really quite varied. As a consultant, I lived my whole life as a consultant. So I didn't actually do the corporate gig as such, but corporations were my clients. But everything was so different. I thought, well, this kind of makes no sense, but it's making more sense now, because the people who come to me ask me questions, and I have probably 2 toolboxes full of things I can, that I can use to help them in a conventional way and less conventional way. Let's say EQ, IQ, and what I call spiritual intelligence. And so I think that it's that acknowledging that about ourselves in our journey. And as you're saying, what do people do now? And you were talking about trying to control outcomes, and well, that's hilarious, right? So I can control what I eat, I can control my emotions, I can control myself, but I can't control outside things. And most of what we're taught is how to control things that we don't really have control over. So understanding how important we are to ourselves. Just a little sidebar, when I had a very toxic, very long divorce process, and it was a difficult marriage, and I kept thinking, when I'm out, I'll finally be free, and I'll finally be able to do this, and I had this whole kind of pie in the sky version of what would happen when I was finally free. And then I realized that even when you live by yourself, you can put yourself last. If you're so used to not thinking about yourself, or thinking about how you feel, thinking about how you want, what you desire, you can literally ignore yourself when you live alone. And that was like,
Very true.
that was a little bit of a, it was like, spaghetti-o, I need to do something about that. But so what I would say is the surrender to, I will do my best. I will show up for what I can do, and I believe, as St. Francis knows, to change the things I can, and to know what I can't, and to know the difference, and to be okay with doing what you can and letting go of all the things that frustrate us and we'd like to change and we have no power to change them. Those are huge energy sucks. And the more we can pull into looking after ourselves and our loved ones and being present at work, doing our best, but also knowing when to just let things go a little bit. And I don't mean quite quitting by that. I hope that's.
No, it makes a lot of sense. There's so much of what you said resonates. It's interesting. It's that, if anyone that's listening is waiting, because we're a soul having human experience, so we've all done it. I'm going to do so much more when this happens. When I get my spiritual breakthrough, when I can hear my guides, all this stuff that we tell ourselves, and we're a soul having a human experience. So the human experience is in the moment. It's not in something in the future. And what you said just resonated so much in the way that, you talked about me in corporate, and I know that. I mean, a lot of my clients are in corporate, so I'm not, so I'm very much there. But I also know that when we come into this world, there's really 3 things. One, we come in to release karma. So whatever we've been through, we've come in to release our own personal karma, and a lot of us in this lifetime, ancestral karma. And also, we've committed as a soul to experience certain things for our own soul's expansion. So that's why so many of us in this lifetime are experiencing so much deeper things, because the planet's also going through a massive shift. And it's really interesting when you take a step out. And for me, it's the third thing. And when you're talking about me going back to corporate, or at least not in a conventional way, but doing some work with more corporates, it's also our training. So whatever deep things we've been through on this planet,
For sure.
I feel like in some way we've been through it for a reason. Yes, to release karma. Yes, for our soul's expansion. But what if it's also our training for whatever's coming next?
Exactly.
That doesn't mean we need to go back. It doesn't mean I need to
No,
take a corporate role on, but it means that my corporate work opens doors for me to maybe connect with individuals that are ready to do massive shifts within their organization. So I'm there as a guide holding space.
yeah, because you understand their world and you speak and you understand their language, you understand
And
where
I'm
they're
that
coming
bridge.
from and
I'm the
their
bridge.
difficulty in changing, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's really, really important, and showing and helping people understand how they can take all of the things that they are and weave them together into something that feels unified, whole, feels more like themselves, and to show them how the world actually wants that from them is such a lovely experience. And I think when you're working with CEOs or founders or people who are let's just say people who are in a position to make changes for many lives directly, through the choices that they make and the companies and the way they run the companies that they own, I think that's immensely powerful, and it's important work. I'm trying to figure out, trying to figure out, I actually know. So I'm going to take that back. I know that I'm meant to be the person who moves something bigger. So I'm not meant to run the big company. I'm supposed to help the person who's running the big company to see things differently, to do things differently, because that way, again, I think there's that surrendering the knowing of what changes you've made, right? That's very American. It's very, I'll say North American, not to, leave out the Canadians, but do you know what I mean? That sort of Western mentality of, I want to change 1,000,000 lives. Well, that's foolish. It's such a small experience, because you can't count the lives that you'll change. We can't know, nor should we know. And it's wonderful not to know. It's the beauty of not knowing, of just offering and just saying, we can't know. Something that you say or something that I say, it could even just be 2 words in the midst of all of this that's going to set off a thought process with somebody. It's going to set off a conversation, or they're going to find out something else that's going to lead to all, and we will never know, nor should we.
And does it matter?
But it's not that it doesn't matter. It's beautiful not to know. It's like, just imagine, just if we can keep in mind, the Tibetan prayer wheels, how powerful all of that is, and our intention to create as much change as possible, whether we know about that or not. What if instead I didn't affect 1,000,000 people? What if I affected 1,000,000,000 people and I'll just never know? And the reality is, of the way interdependent works, it's probably easier to affect a much larger number of people than we can ever count. And it's that wanting to know that is
It's the
very
ripple effect.
ego-based, right?
Yeah. It's the ripple effect. It's just,
Mm.
and when I say doesn't really matter, what I mean is we have no control over it. So as long as, but my deal with God and my guides is I'm just going to show up, and I'm going to keep showing up in wherever they put me. And I'll always say my purpose is anyone I connect with, I want to leave them better than I found them.
Absolutely.
So if my words, podcast episode or whatever, change one person's life,
It's worth
beautiful.
it. Yeah.
That's I hope.
Yeah.
But does it have a ripple effect and change the people around them? Who knows? Does that ripple effect have changed even more lives? Who knows? I have no control over that. All I can control is me showing up, me shining my light, me sharing whatever truth I have, and then trusting. It's like we did a grounding before we began this episode. Our intention was anyone needs to hear these words, be guided to them. And that we have no control over that, whatever that looks like, but we trust that the other person's guides or whoever needs to hear it is guided to hear these words. And that's not on us. That's also, it's a co-creation, but we've decided, both of us have decided to show up, share whatever truth I have, and leave it to other forces to guide. So the control we have is shining our light. And that's what I feel like we've been pushed to do, is to show up.
And I would say, but can I share a little story?
Sure, of course.
I'll make it as fast as I can.
No, go for it, of course.
Okay.
Sure, you do.
So in Italy, I was a regular on television, and one program I was involved in was a daytime television program. They're called container programs in Italian. And essentially, they're those big, long programs that last 2.5 hours or something. And there are all these different segments. And in the US, I think they tend to be morning shows. In Italy, they tend to be sort of lunchtime, right after lunch, or I'm not sure why. But anyways, this big program. And there were and typically, like the Morning, Good Morning America or whatever it is, all these programs have, the all year version, and then they'll have the summer version. So think 185 episodes a season. So people are now sort of habituated to Netflix seasons and binge watching things. And that a TV series is shorter, but these big programs have like 185 episodes a season with all these little segments that are 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 1 minute. So tens of thousands of segments. In all of this, I was doing, cooking and decoration and things like that. And I thought, well, this is fun. I get to go on, it's fun to be on TV. It's fun to get hair and makeup, but it didn't feel significant. And so I thought, okay. And I started making offerings. And this is something that I took directly from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And so it was really not only the people who are involved directly and indirectly. Well, indirectly are the people who made this computer, the people who made the chair I'm sitting on, the people who made my clothes, the people who, grew the food or, grew the coffee and roasted the coffee that I drank, and when you start looking at it that way, it becomes, there are millions and millions of people involved. And then it was anybody who needs this, may they be inspired to look after themselves. May they be nourished with whatever it is they need, not necessarily what I was making, right? So if you need love, you'll be love, or vitamin B12, it would be vitamin B12. And maybe you're inspired to look at that, to do this for yourself and for others. And it was whether they saw the program or not, whether they zipped by it and never saw a word, even if they never even heard my name or heard of the program, may they benefit of that. And one day I was early, very rare, and they were late, also very rare. And I had like an hour and a half to make this offering, and it just became more and more extensive. The next time I came into the studio, everybody was fawning over me. The executive producers, like, everybody's lovely, they're polite, but it was like, this is weird. So I asked my writer, I said, what happened? He said, of all the segments since we've ever been on air, of all the segments of all the episodes, you had a spike in ratings that was like a quantum leap above everything else. And it was only my intention because I did exactly on camera what I'd always done. So when we don't think these things make a difference, I experience firsthand that they do. And even though I know they do because I had that experience, I can also forget and kind of disbelieve that is what's happening. But that to me was absolute proof of this, that it does shift everything. It shifts how you're received. It shifts also, I think, even if you don't believe in any of that, for yourself only, shifting into this sense of generosity and this sense of surrender to knowing what the outcome will be, and that the outcome will be more than you could ever possibly know, and you're offering it to more people you could ever come in contact with, allows you to move from your head that's going, oh my God, what if I say the wrong thing? Blah, 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 blah. What if I don't get a raise? What if they don't like this? What if they say that? All of that goes away, and you're offering from your heart, directly from your heart. And that is in itself worth the practice.
So beautiful. I love that. Isn't ironic how we created, right? It's that the moment we let go of our expectations and kind of just be, the world just changes. But it's like when we have these expectations of how many numbers, or whatever numbers, whatever KPIs we're going for. It's like when we trust that we're being supported and just being led, and the universe really wants us to show up in whatever way, the magic just happens.
I also think you make better choices. Like I want to say yes, magic happens, but you also deal with things differently. And I think
Sure.
you have an ability to make choices and decisions that are much more generous. They're much more compassionate. They're kinder. There's a softness in those choices while you're still running that business, because we're
Yeah,
always going to need tables, t-shirts, clothes, computers, phones, all the things. But it's, how we're doing what we're doing, how we look after ourselves, how we look after those that we're
yeah,
basically in some way have a guardianship of. When they work for us, we have some relationship. We are our brother's keeper in many ways.
I love it.
And I think that's really really important and beautiful to realize, and it allows you to make concrete decisions. Because I think one of the things people struggle with is, spirituality is all vague. No, it's a highly practical experience. A positive spiritual practice or a fruitful spiritual practice. I don't want to say positive, but an active one will lead you to be more kinder, more compassionate towards yourself, towards others, more
I love it.
patient,
Yeah,
try and make better decisions, think differently about what you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve it. So ultimately, I'm also trying to close that gap between what people think spirituality is and is not, and spirituality in action is actually wildly powerful.
I love it.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is why a lot of episodes will talk about self-care, because for me, kind of having a strong meditative practice, some time in nature,
Mm.
you don't always get tangible results. But what it allows you to do is be more present in whatever's happening in your world, and it allows you to make more heart-led decisions, because you're just more present in whatever's happening in your heart rather than your head. It's just when you're always on the go and you can't give yourself 10 minutes just to be in silence and meditation, then you're always reacting, right? It's like, as humans, we have primal instincts, and a lot of it is to react. And when you're not getting that time for you, you tend to react. You're just like, but actually, when you can breathe and just center yourself and feel your heart, you get to respond. And response is more from the heart. React is primal. If you get attacked, you either defend or you retreat. And it's like, but when you respond and you
Mm.
breathe, you practice the pause, and you have that time for you in self-care, it just gives you that peace in your heart. And this, but as you said, it's not a KPI, right? It's not a tangible. If I meditate every day, that doesn't necessarily, but it gives you the ability to feel, rather than, for me, the shift that's happening right now from divine masculine to divine feminine,
Mm.
it's all about shifting from I think to I feel, being more heart-led, trusting your heart, which is interesting, right? The old paradigm would say don't make emotional decisions, but our soul, our journey, our understanding of why we're here is more likely to come from our heart and our soul than our head. Our head is very much historic, right? What we've been through. And this is the beauty of the moment right now is take time for you. What's important to you, and that self-care is so important. So I'd love to know more about what do you do, and what do you advise your clients in terms of self-care? You talked about Buddhist practices, and what's your guidance to maybe somebody that doesn't feel like they're in control, so much is happening? What would you advise them to be, to kind of, because it's easy for us to talk about it, right? Be
Yeah,
present, make
yeah,
heart-led decisions.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure, okay, it's all good words. But what would your advice be to somebody who's struggling to do
Never hits right and hit send. Like that's just
that?
that's what just don't do that. Give yourself a beat. We have the impression of urgency. And a lot of, let's say, managers or people around you will impress upon you an urgency that is perceived rather than real. So I think that if you can just allow yourself that moment, um, you know, before you send something, to just move away, especially if you're feeling very emotional about something or very pressured or there's some sort of injustice towards you. That's tough. And you're kind of respond in fighting mode, which is what we've been taught, by the way. We've been taught to fight back. But, ask yourself, is this what's best for everyone concerned? Because if I only worry about myself, we can't build our happiness on someone else's unhappiness. And I think we're learning, I mean, the whole world can see that, but we're not necessarily taking that to heart. And while you were saying those things, what came to mind is it's way out of left field, but I'm following it, is what's I was taught as a Mother Mary bath. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, but it's so lovely. It's a contemplative bath, essentially. So it's about a pound of sea salt, a pound of Epsom salts, and any essential oils you feel like throwing in, and about 125 mLs of apple cider vinegar. And it's a very purifying, calming bath. And you set an intention before you get into the bath of what you'd like to either receive or resolve or release, and just lay there and let water help you. And a lot of things can happen, and I won't go too far down the path of saying what can come from that, but it can be that you will either receive and some insights during that 20 minutes, should be about 20 minutes or so, or it could come afterwards. But essentially, it's a moment. It's also, there's an act of surrender, there's an act of cleansing, there's an act of asking for support from others or from your higher self or from the universe, or just, please, I'd love to know from God, whatever, is the language that you most connect with, or that feels more appropriate for you. But those can be extremely powerful. And some people will also call in a body of water that they want to receive information from. That's lovely. But just that bath on its own is such an amazing practice. And in that sort of self-care, Instagram vibe of people doing, candles and stuff, this is actually a very practical and beautiful thing that you can do. Yeah.
And for me, that setting intentions and just being.
Yeah.
I guess that's my signal to have a bath today. It's just for me, taking a bath. It's so calming. It's just such a beautiful release, and just water, just being in it, and just it's so powerful. I love it. I love it. So that's definitely my sign. I mean, I live in London, so I don't live close to water, but it's really interesting. It's for me going to the beach and stepping in water and just allowing Mother Earth to just cleanse me is such a powerful thing. So, but taking a bath and just doing it is so beautiful.
But asking, you can ask a question, you can ask for an insight, you can ask to release something, and just set the intention that it can come during that or after. But if it's like, oh, I have to get the answer before the bath, otherwise it's a failure, is again a mind game. So it's just like, okay, from here on, I'm open to receiving some insights around this thing that I'm struggling with.
And the other thing I like to do when I unplug the water and the water is being released, I just imagine the things I've been holding on to just being washed away.
And I know there are people that don't have bathtubs. You can kind of take the same mixture and scrub your body with it, which is also good for your skin. So you can also do it that way, because I know some people say, but I don't have a bathtub. So, it's not quite the same thing, but it's extremely helpful. And you can set the intention for it to clean anything about what you're holding, whether it's energetic, emotional, psychological, anything that's going on with you, and just allowing yourself to feel a deep sense of, a deep cleanse, but also a lightness, that's
beautiful.
It's a lovely practice. Yeah.
And it's so much about your intention.
Yeah.
Just set it, and just be and allow magic to happen. It's our expectations of what magic looks like, and our epiphany. Oh, I didn't get this. Just be and be kind to yourself, and just because magic happens I feel like the universe sends magic in ways that we don't even expect. So if we're open to receiving magic in so many different ways, magic happens. So I love it. I could keep talking to you for hours, but I'd love for you to just share, if something you said resonated, if people wanted to work with you, what does that look like? And also any final bits of advice you may have for the listener.
Please feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm happy. Or you can write me at donna@donnabrown.com. Very inventive domain. And it's essentially a combination of spiritual and business mentoring, really. Like, it's how can you be more of you, and what would that look like in a way that is a livelihood of some kind. And so it can be, and I'm also a public speaker. I speak a lot, as you might have noticed. No, but I do, aside from talking, but I do a lot of public speaking, and I find that really wonderful in a profound way to connect with a larger audience. And so there you are, open to all of that. I
I
think
love
the
it.
advice for people, I'd love you to trust yourself a little more. All our education systems and institutional systems, and by that I mean corporate and government and a lot of social structures, have been essentially separating ourselves from ourselves, right? And there's that, and to not trust your intuition, and that it has to make sense on paper. And we're doing SWOT analysis of everything, and it's like, okay, but that could still be the wrong choice for you. So don't be afraid to trust your intuition. And for people who have a big thing that seems really far away, I would say something else as well, is if you have a big goal or a big dream or something that you would love for yourself, for self-care, and that feels really out of hand or not feasible at this point in time, what is the smallest thing that you can do here and now that has the flavor of that? And I think that opens you up to, it's like, oh yes, that experience is possible to me. It's like a little seedling that allows you to move towards that, because quite often we'll have something we would love for ourselves on a spiritual level, on a relationship level, on an abundance level, but it's I either have it or I don't, and there's kind of like a yes or no, win or lose attitude, which is actually not the way life is in general. And so to just move yourself slowly into that, what's the smallest thing that I can do that feels abundant? What's the smallest thing that I can do that feels loving, or feels like I'm free, or feels playful, or feels fun, whatever it is. And to honor those things and not diminish them because they're small. Do you know what I mean? Or because they're not
Yeah,
the whole step that you would like, but they are themselves complete, and they're a step on that journey towards what it is you're hoping.
I love it. Do one thing for you today, no matter how big or small, and just send such a powerful message to you and your psyche and to the universe that you're important.
And that you're
So I
ready.
love it.
And that you're
So,
ready
yeah,
to make those changes, because we're always getting ready to be ready, you know.
I love it. Always getting ready to be ready. Yeah, I love it. So thank you for agreeing to be a guest on this podcast. I loved our conversation. Such a beautiful light. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for our listeners. Thank you for everybody. I'm gonna sending so much love and light out. We're all going through so much shifts.
Mhm.
The more that we can just be and just ride the wave and just trust in whatever's coming next, the more joy that you feel inside your heart. So I'm sending so much love and light out to everybody. And know that you're meant to be here. Know that you have a beautiful light. Please shine it. And Donna, I'm going to hand over to you to close us out.
Thank you, Nims. Thank you for this space, the space to share, the time to share, and for all the guests that you have, to giving them a place to share their voice, to share what's in their hearts, what's in their minds. Um, and may all of this be of benefit to everyone, to encourage each one of you who's listening, or to those who may never even hear our names, to be themselves, to have the courage to be them a little more themselves, and to speak into existence what they really want. Thank you so
Love it.
much.
Love it. Thank you. I'm sending so much love and light out. Bye for now.